Let's crack management exams. Join Unacademy, India's largest learning platform, and get the best possible resources to crack CAT, GMAT, and all other management exams. My name is Anand Venkatesan, and I'm an educator with Unacademy. You can see from my profile that I'm Bangalore graduate. I've done my engineering from VIT Vellore, and have about a decade's worth of experience in having trained students for a variety of these exams like CAT, ZAT, IFT, NMAT, and many others. Well, I'll quickly also tell you about what the Unacademy platform offers. Well, in a nutshell, I'll say it compares, the app compares very favorably to a classroom course that you could get with, get offline. Because you get everything. You get live classes, you get quiz tests and quizzes, so you can practice what you learn. You get structure, which is exactly what you want with the coaching institute or with an online learning app. And I think the fact that it's online means that it gives you unlimited access. There's tons of content that you can consume, and there is no limit on when and how much you can. Well, educators on the platform come with deep amount of experience. There are educators here who are considered a subject matter expert. They've scored, on account of having scored 99 percentile or more in CAT, in successive years, in fact, if not one, right? I myself, and I am Bangalore graduate, can tell you with clarity that there are many educators here who have these kind of credentials. So your preparation is in good hands. Let's also look at live classes on the platform. There are two ways in which you can attend live classes. One is called special, right? Special classes are basically free of cost. They're there for you to take as trial. Basically what you can do is just go to the app, sign up, and classes. There's obviously a limitation on how much you can do so, but the trial account gives you free access to special. But if you really want the big advantage out of a platform like an app like Unacademy, then you need to subscribe. And once you subscribe, you get you get a plus subscription. And plus subscription basically allows you to join multiple batches. Right? There are many batches that you can join once you subscribe for plus. There is no limitation on how many batches you can join, which means that each batch will have a different schedule, right? So what you can do is you can mix and match and study pretty much every single day of the week. That's the big advantage that comes to you by subscription with into a plus course. You can see these are the batches shown on your screen. You can see the kind of variety there is in terms of flexibility and context of preparation. So if you're somebody who's starting off for next year, well, there are batches which will teach you the basics, right? Go slow, allow you to learn little by little, right? But then there are batches which are going to be more compressed, like crash courses, closer to the actual exam. You'll have shorter term courses. You can learn faster. You can learn at full pace. You'll also have batches which will focus on particular areas, right? It might say, okay, let's practice algebra, let's practice arithmetic, right? Or it could be a batch which will only choose particular question types and say, let's deal with logarithms, or let's deal with difficult problems from probability, right? Something like that. So there's a large variety of batches that you will see, and so they will suit all your needs, right? All you need to do is subscribe to one of these subscription plans. You can see 1 month plans are available, and the duration goes all the way till 12 or 24 months. Well, my personal view, longer the duration, the better it is for you. I think I say that because there's GDPI, which is about 5-6 months away, right? And by the time it finishes, it's going to be the month of April, May. So I think you still should choose something which is more than definitely 5 or 6 months. So I think 6 months, if not the 1 year program at the very least. But if you are looking at other exams, or you're keeping next year also on the horizon, maybe a 24-month plan is ideally suited. And remember that you get a 10% discount by using my referral code. See there right at the bottom, AV01 is my referral code, and that gives you a 10% discount on any of these subscription plans, right? Okay, on that note, we'll get into today's agenda, which is to talk about the common mistakes that people make, because we are a week away, in fact less than that. The coming Sunday is when CAT 2020 is going to happen. So I'm sure a lot of you guys watching this video would be already in that zone of, let's do the best possible in the last remaining days and try to maximize our performance, right? Chances are a lot of you are also nervous, right? Shaking in the knees, because oops, I just noticed I seem to be having some network issues. Right, I'm sorry. I think there was a technical issue at my end. I hope you guys are able to see me now. Right. So we're talking about the last mile sort of advice, because we're about a week away from this year's CAT. There's plenty of there is a burden of expectations. A lot of you must have been preparing for these exams for some time. A lot of you would also be focused on what have I learned. Let me sort of put that together. Maybe some of you guys started late, are doing decently well in mocks but don't know what to do, right? So in this session, what I want to do is I want to make sure that you're doing the right things in the last week, right? Because I don't think right now is a time where I should be advising you about how to prepare, but what could you possibly do in the next 3-4 days that could actually give you an advantage, right? What ideally should you be doing in the last week or the last 3-4 days, right, of your CAT preparation, or in fact any other exam, right? Well, the basic planks, the basic things on which we will discuss today's topic, right, is A, how do you deal with the syllabus, right, the exam itself, balancing act. We will discuss what all you need to balance in the actual test, and are you prepared for that? Do you have goals, and what is your strategy to achieve those goals in the exam? What about mocks? Should we continue to take mocks? Should we analyze them? And finally, something that most people don't really think about, and I think even though it comes last, it is probably the most important thing, which is, are you working on your attitude? Are you feeling confident? Are you feeling good about yourself or not? Right. So 5 things I'll quickly talk about. Well, over the course of the next 45 minutes or an hour, in fact, hour and more. The first is syllabus, right? We all know CAT exam. With 3 days away from this hugely difficult exam, hugely competitive exam, should I be worrying about the syllabus, and exactly what in the syllabus should I be worrying about at this late hour? Well, when it comes to syllabus, one of the questions that you want to ask yourself is there an 80-20 principle at play here, which means I hope you guys have heard of the 80-20 principle, right? That 80% of, for example, in an economic sense, I would say 80-20 or principle says that 80% of the wealth is held by 20% of individuals, right? Or if you look at 20% of the cases, then you're probably estimating as good as the 80% of the entirety, right, of what you're trying to analyze. So is that true in CAT, right? Is there 20% of the syllabus that actually contributes to 80% of marks, right? Is that valid? Obviously not, right? I think an emphatic answer to that question is no. I wish that rule worked. I wish I could focus on 3, maybe 4 things, but that's not how CAT works. That's not how competitive exam works. Every single topic, every single question that comes in the exam is important, and so you can't afford the luxury of leaving something, right? So no, there is no 80-20 principle at work. Does that mean I'll have to study everything? Well, maybe the question is the wrong one. Maybe I need to ask myself about focus, right? So sure, everything is important, but how well do I need to know all the topics, right? Every single topic in the exam. Do I need to know everything well, right? Do I need to be a jack of all the trades? No. A lot of things or know a lot of topics or have practiced a lot of topics, but I think only up to a certain extent, right? Versus master a few. I know very few topics, but I'm assured of getting those questions right? So basically, jack of all trades versus master of few. Can I possibly focus my attention on a few topics only in this late hour, or should I focus on all the topics but maybe restrict myself on depth, right? That's the question to ask. And to well answer that question, I think a big data point here is, what about the weightage across topics? Well, I don't know if you've seen my videos, but in previous videos I've already talked about the distribution, of questions and weightage. Well, in the verbal section, for example, there is a clear correlation, there is a clear, insight or a clear glaring fact, which is that most of the questions are reading comprehension. So out of 34, expect 27, 28, in fact not 34 anymore. Out of the 25, 30 questions that are going to come, you can probably expect say 80% or 70% of them, at the very least, if not more, to be from reading comprehension. So yes, if it's verbal section, you can focus, have a narrow focus and master reading comprehension or understand how reading comprehensions work, right? But can I do that in LR? No. Well, LR, in the logical reasoning section, there are questions of various types. There is analytical reasoning, there's mapping, there are questions from arrangement. In fact, there's also data interpretation and data sufficiency. So there's a vast variety of questions within LR. Again, you can't focus on a few. Likewise with quant, right? Arithmetic and number properties and probably algebra, right, accounts for most questions, but it's not like you can leave geometry, it's not like you can leave PNC probability, right? So that hack it, the topics doesn't really make sense. So what exactly do you do? Well, the answer is a simple linear fact, right? You focus on a tiered approach, right? What I mean is that think about, looking at topics and bunch them into tiers and look at those tiers in isolation, right? A tiered approach is one that works the best. What do I mean by preparing tiers? Well, in any topic there are specific areas, right? Think about, for example, time, speed and distance, right? So you consider a topic like time, speed and distance, and you can see that within time, speed and distance there are various types of questions, right? You'll have some that use the concept of relative speed, some that probably use the concept of circular motion, or some that need you to understand clocks, right? Or some that need you to work with boats. So there are clearly subtopics, right? There are clear distinct areas within every topic, and in fact, if you don't bunch them by the concept itself, you can also think of them in terms of, there are some types of questions or some areas which are basic, right? Quite simple, and they're easy to understand, and this is something which comes in most questions, right? These concepts come or are applicable in most questions, right? Okay, what that means is they are more commonly occurring in the paper, right? And then you have a higher difficulty level of question, which is, let's say, an application of a known concept. I could probably use the same formula, distance equal to speed into time, but I could apply it differently. I could probably maybe complicate the question, or I could maybe make the question itself easy but the calculations hard, right? Or the units hard to work with. So I'm basically varying aspects of the question and increasing the complexity of the problem, and the more complex the problem, the more it will have a specific approach, right? And if I take some things which are very, very different, right? For example, even though clock also use the same formula, distance equal to speed into time, but the way that you work with the problem on clocks is very different, right? And so it's a very specific approach, right? So the more specific an approach, the less the utility of that type of tier, right? Questions of that type. And then you have finally what I'd like to call in cricket parlance a googly, because you're expecting it to go one way, it goes another, right? You don't really know what to do in the question. It misleads you into a false approach, wastes your time, right? So googlies are ones that you should be avoiding. Why are they easy to avoid? Because it's a ball that it's a question that you haven't seen before, right? A googly has to be something which sounds different, whereas the basic type of question will never look different. You will know it. You will be able to easily identify it. So the advantage of looking at it this way is that, okay, when I attempt a paper, I should know whether it's basic, application based, or googly, time, speed and distance, or numbers, or algebra, or geometry, but only skim the top, right? Don't go into very, very specific types of questions, very hard, vague kind of, tricky questions. Focus more on basics, because I think the pattern in the last few years has been, you need to know, in every, in total, for example, in quant, I think you need to know minimum of 50 types of questions spread across, let's say about, 60 question types spread across maybe 30 topics within these five units, right? Arithmetic, algebra, geometry, PNC, probability, and numbers. Those are your basic, 5 types of units, right? So the clear reward is evident if you focus only on basics. So that's, the first thing I'm going to leave you with, right? Greater focus on simpler, easier to solve questions. Maybe once you practice, you start moving things from application into basic. Yes, that will happen. But the point is, focus on the easier variety, not on the harder variety, right? Easier said than done, because that's not what we do. Our revision is always very extensive, right? But please do try to manage that. Second, balancing act, right? What do I mean, right? So a balancing act basically means that, what do I focus on, right? Should I focus on only one section, which is my weakest section? Let's say I've been taking mocks and I realize that I'm doing well on quant, but I can't manage verbal ability, right? So what do I do, right? In the last 3 days, should I only be practicing RC? Is that a wise thing to do? Or should I, ignore RC and focus on the rest, right? Because if it's weak now, it can't get better in 3 days, right? So what should I focus on? Should I focus on mocks, right? If my mock performance tells me what are strong, what are weak, which section is strong, which section is weak, should I focus on the weaker section or the stronger section? Well, like the word suggested, we need to balance this act, right? And when I talk about balance, one more thing that you need to balance is, you need to balance out, internally you need to balance out the fear, because I think why we choose to focus on a weaker subject is that we have this fear, right? What I mean is fear for a particular topic, fear for a particular section, right? There is this inherent, so I know for a fact that 7 out of 10 people who are, preparing for the CAT hate math, or think they are weak at math. So, which means there is inherently a fear of math, right? They don't have to accept it or acknowledge it, but it does exist, right? So you probably have fear for a particular section, right? If you're not afraid of a section, then you must definitely be a little uneasy about some topics. So should you be focusing on your fear? Should you be focusing on your worries, the problem topics, problem subjects, problem sections? Or should you be focusing on ones where you're confident, where you're doing well in the mock, right? And so, is this really a logical question to ask? Well, I think my advice to you is pretty straightforward. It's also pretty obvious. If you're wanting to decide focus A, I think greater focus needs to be on your strengths than on your weaknesses, right? 3 days away, I think you need to learn how to capitalize right now. And I think, in terms of defense, in terms of, trying to solve some of the harder problems, the ones that at least you don't understand, is going to be a tall order at this point in time. But I'd rather that whatever you've studied and you've learnt and you've been able to understand, at least you try and retain some of those concepts or some of those approaches. So focus on areas where you're doing well and try and do much, much better than usual, right? The second way in which I would approach this is also that, okay, which gives me the maximum return, right? Which section is correlated with percentile, right? Is this statement correct that, is quant directly linked to percentile? Like if somebody does, better at quant and not so good at English versus somebody who does well at English and not so good at quant, assuming LR remains the same, right? Will the quant performance merit a higher percentile, or is it verbal performance? Well, this is not so easy, but in general what is observed is that the verbal section is more closely correlated, right? But we'll come to that, right? And finally, obviously, the question in a nutshell is, how do we capitalize? How do we maximize our returns? How do we maximize our score? How do we maximize our performance by making use of this advice, right? How will it help you maximize returns? Well, if you want to maximize in the last 3 days, if you want to maximize your performance, then revise all strong topics, right? Things that you're good at, and do that across sections. You can't focus on one, definitely not. I think if you have 4 days to go, every single day focus on all three, and pick out, make out a revision plan. Make sure that you go through everything that you are good at, and then a few that you're not good at, make sure that you pick and choose amongst them, right? And remember, right, it's good to have a balance, because it's not like focusing on quant is getting you a 99 percentile. You still have to do well in logical and the verbal sections, right? So it's good to be smart. It's good to cut your losses, right? And just as I think it's important to know clearly, since I keep saying this, capitalizing on your strengths is more important than working on your weaknesses. You also need to know which these areas are, right? If you don't already know them, I think the next 2-3 days should probably be spent understanding that more than anything, right? What areas should I be attempting, which are my strengths, and what areas or question types should I be leaving, because these are my weaknesses, these are black holes, and this eat up time, right? Know your comfort zone. At the tip of your finger, right? You need to know these at the tip of your finger, because you should be able to reel out a list of 20-25 question types, right? Now, I don't mean for you to sort of memorize these, but if I gave you 40 topics, then you should be able to pick out 20 that you find easy, right? And like an MCQ test, you should be ABCD very, very quickly, right? Not wasting any time there. And obviously keep this in mind, because most test takers are engineers. It turns out that percentile score moves more on account of verbal, right? So the spike will really happen if you can bring a significant jump in your verbal score. So if I was you right now, I would focus on the verbal section. I would try and make sure that RC, I have some more learning, some more understanding of reading comprehension, or at least where I falter in those question types, and maybe working on those will give me a greater return, right? So greater returns, I think, from the verbal section, right? And finally, remember, I can say this with from based on my experience, the percentile is more closely linked to being an all-rounder, somebody who scores well, maybe an average score across sections, as opposed to being a specialist, which means scoring really, really high in one, maybe 100 percentile in one, but very, very poor marks in the others, right? So you always prefer to be an all-rounder. So focus across this, right? And to be able to do this, I think I keep talking about something called a cheat sheet, right? First and foremost, you need to have a list of formulae ready, and not just formulae but also approaches, which is why I prefer to call it a cheat sheet and not a formula sheet. But you need to have some reference material for the next 4 days, right? Keep revising, keep going through all the concepts, keep trying to make it more specific, right? The more specific your revision, the more your instincts are going to be sharper, right? So the moment I see a question, it should ring a bell saying, okay, this is from this topic, I know this topic. Question comes up, this is from another topic, I don't know this topic as well, right? So though that reaction time needs to be low, which can only happen if you do regular revision, right? So in a nutshell, remember, CAT is a management exam. It will test your managerial ability. In this case, the resource that you're trying to manage is yourself, is your ability, right? So I think if you aspire to become a good manager, you should definitely learn how to become a good personal manager. Manage your own abilities, manage your preparation, manage your strengths and weaknesses. Okay, let's also talk about goals, right? It's very important to have a clear picture in your mind, know where you stand, and have a clear goal that you'll try and achieve. I think this is one of those areas which is less important right now, because I think your goal depends on your mock performance, and some of those goals can be too lofty. can just really can be unrealistic. The other day I was speaking to an ex-student of mine, and we were sort of recounting what worked for him in the last week. I mean, it was simply a conversation that we had where here's a person who was scoring a 70 percentile in quant, and all I did was I reminded him to revise all the mocks that he did, and I told him, when you are revising, don't look at all questions, because I want you to look at and this boy had done about 10 mocks. So I told him, go through all the 10 mocks, maybe one or two more which you will be attempting, but when you are going through those 12 mocks, just focus on the questions that you consider basic or solvable, right? Easy, medium level, basically. Whatever you consider as hard, learn to identify them then and there and skip them. Don't look at their solution. They're useless for you right now. Focus only on the easy ones, but don't go over them once. Make a list of them and go over them multiple times. And that's all he did, right? He didn't take any new mocks. This was his revision in a nutshell. And what this did was that he could react. I guess he could react and choose questions properly in the last week. He learned how to do those in the available mocks, and scored a 95 percentile in the end, right? And I think a good enough jump, if you ask me, a very plausible jump too, right? And if it can happen for them, I'm sure it can happen with every single one of you, right? So keep your hopes up. But what really should be our goals at this point in time? Should we be telling ourselves, this is the target, right? I want to get into the IIMs. I need to score a 99 percentile because that will get me a call from IIM Ahmedabad. Yeah. So this is what I need to achieve, right? But is this a good goal? Well, yes and no, because it's a good goal maybe a year ago, but it's not a good goal right now. Maybe my goal right now needs to not be about the outcome, but rather the process. Right? So can't think about the percentile. Can I think about the score? Well, I've heard that 170 is a 99 percentile. So anything above 150 is something I can settle for. Should I be targeting a score like that? Well, if you expect the question to be in a set pattern, maybe yes. But then CAT is not like that. CAT is unpredictable. CAT can throw up surprises, right? Just the fact that it has been moderately hard, not even hard. Very moderate. In the last couple of years or so, doesn't mean this year it's going to be the same difficulty level. It could just change. It could spike up or it could spike down. So the target score is not a fixed one. I can't work with a fixed target. So what do I do? Okay, if I can't target a score, can I target an attempted number? Can I say, well, this is in percentage terms, attempt 75% plus, right? Attempt more than 3/4 of the questions. Now that there are only 75 questions, should I be attempting around 60 questions, right? Is that a valid goal to have? Is that a good goal to have? Well, again, you can see that attempts will rely on your accuracy, but attempt also will depend on the difficulty level of the paper, right? So I don't know if you can be so confident as to predict that in this version of the CAT, I can attempt 3 out of 4 questions, right? I don't know if that's really a good plan to have, a good goal to have, right? So, well, I don't know what to say. I think you need to, if you're thinking on these lines, then you're thinking in a very shallow manner, right? Because I don't think goals can be static. I think I've made that point adequately clear. You need to be a little fluid with your approach. You need to be prepared for all eventualities. And right now you're staring down the barrel of the gun. You better be prepared. So have detailed plans, have detailed goals, right? These goals should depend on difficulty level. And you should be able to chart out different possibilities. You should say, okay, what if English is hard in the test, right? What should my goal be? If English is hard, I won't know until I reach the English section, right? But the moment I reach the English section, I should have a goal which is applicable for an easy section, a goal which is applicable for a very hard section as well. And I should have an in-between plan too, right? So my goal should, be detailed. It should account for a lot of possibilities, and you should also set yourself an approach, right? What if it's hard? What do I do? Well, if I find RCs hard, I'm gonna quickly go through all the RCs first, right? The moment I reach a tough RC, or maybe I will start evaluating the topics first, and then only if I find all the topics doable will I attempt the RCs. Otherwise, if the topics seem to be easy, all of them, then I'll straight away start attempting from the very first set, right? So approach, the manner in which you attempt, and the manner in which you will try to reach that goal should also be identified at the same time, right? So don't just focus on your goals, also identify an approach, a possible way of enabling or reaching or accomplishing your goal. And finally, obviously, is a strategy, right? Clearly, I need to have a plan, right? I need to know what, if indeed there is a flexibility to choose, what should be the order in which I should do my sections, right? Well, if given a choice, I think it should always be the easier. Remember, this advice is true not just for, it's true for all exam, any exam where you have that choice. What do you want to begin with? I think you should always begin with your strongest section, because, any test is, your performance depends on your rhythm. And you build rhythm in a 2-hour exam. You build rhythm in the first few moments you spend in it, and so you'd rather build a momentum right at the start by going with your easiest section, right? Okay, which does that mean that the hardest section should be at the end? No, right? The hardest section should be actually immediately or in between, sandwiched between the easy and the medium section, right? Whatever you find harder should be in the middle, right? So for example, if I'm good at English but not so good at math, I'm going to start with English, put math in the middle, and then do LR, right? Why? Because at least English gets me into a groove. I just might feel good about myself when I come to math, and I don't leave quant for the end, because in the end is when I'm under most time pressure, right? I'm worried the most. So in such worried times, why deal with the hardest subject, right? I think ideally I should deal with quant, my weakest subject. For an example, quant, I should probably deal that in the middle when I have less of a pressure because of time. All right. The second question in terms of strategy is, how do you keep time? How do you manage time, right? Because sure, there's a timer that shows you, for every section that there are 40 minutes to go, and here's your remaining time. It keeps running on the top. So what do I mean? What do you mean manage time? You just need to keep looking and solving questions, right? But no, that doesn't suffice, right? I think you need to be very clear in terms of approach. How many times do you look at time? Look at the timer. Do you look up? Every time you look up, are you looking at the timer? Because that's going to be a waste of time, right? So you'd rather look away every now and then, right? And why do you look at time? I think the question is also, okay, you looked at time and you saw it, but just measuring that observation is useless unless you use it. So every time you look at it, you need to process it somehow, right? So what's that process, right? How do you make a decision based on that? I think that's the question you need to answer. Well, I think that given that it's going to be a 40-minute section, what you can do is you can have a target for how much I will attempt in those 40 minutes for a easy exam and for a hard exam. Say for example, I tell myself, okay, if it's I expect to have at least 25 questions. So in a section, if there are 25 questions, as an example, quant, and the paper is easy, then I'll say, okay, traditionally easy papers I should be attempting 75%, right? So I'll say, okay, if there are 25 questions, I definitely need 18 or so questions, right? I need to get there. But if it's not so easy, then I need to do fewer, right? So maybe 14 or so questions will suffice, right? Now what does that mean for me? It means first of all that in 60 seconds I do look at 25 questions, but I only try to solve between 14 to 18 questions, right? Which means and assume that for every question you waste a minute, right? So 30 minutes, 25 minutes gone, right? Now the remaining 35 minutes in that, the remaining 15 minutes are spent on solving those 15 questions, right? Additional time. So you need to apportion that additional time. So maybe give at max 1 minute per question that you actually want to solve, right? So upper limit is 2 minutes, right, for those 15 to 18 questions. But what that means is that I need to keep looking up, and whatever is the time that is remaining, if I divide that by 2, that should tell me how many more I'll be able to attempt, right? And see if that is within limits, right? Basically look at the timer and divide that by 2 and ask yourself, is it okay if I attempt these many questions, right? Because that's what you'll be able to do. So if you have 40 questions on the clock, you'll say, okay, in this time, divide by 2, 40 by 2, 20. In this time I can probably hope to achieve, attempt 20 questions, right? 15 minutes later, I looked up, I saw 25. Then I'll infer that, okay, now 25 by 2 is about 12, 13. So I'll probably be able to attempt another 12, 13 questions. Is that realistic? Is that good enough? Well, in the first few questions so far, I've attempted only 2. So even if I attempt 12, this is an easy paper, I won't be doing good enough. At least I'll tell myself now to go faster, right? And that measurement has to happen. Remember, you need to measure, you need to identify, but don't panic, right? Now is not the time to panic, to say, oh my God, I'm doing very, very poorly. This exam is gone. I can't really improve. I can't catch up. Don't think those negative thoughts. But yes, the fact that you've measured, you've calculated, means that you need to be agile and shift, right? The moment you realize that you're going slow, you need to be faster, right? You need to tell yourself, okay, I need to spend less time. At least there is a course correction at play, right? So learn how to manage, time, and learn also, right, like to have intermediate goals, right? If I want to attempt, it's an easy paper, I want to attempt around 18 questions in an hour, then it means in every 15 minutes, that's 40 minutes, right? So if I divide it into 3 segments, right, 20 minutes each. So every 20 minutes I should have attempted 6 questions, right? If I'm at 5 after 15 minutes, then I'm doing just behind time. I'm running just behind time. But if I've done 8, then A, I should tell myself this paper looks easy, and B, I should tell myself I'm doing really well, continue the good work, right? So know how to manage time, know what to measure, and how to benchmark, right? Next step is attempting, right? How do you choose, right? Questions are popping up. You're telling yourself, I'll spend maybe 30 seconds to a minute to make that decision. Should I attempt? Am I attempting this or not, right? Beyond a minute, you should tell yourself, okay, if I'm attempting it, I got a minute more. Otherwise, leave, right? So how do I decide in 30 seconds or so whether I'm attempting the question or not? Well, I did talk about this actually. Tiering of questions, right? You should by now, know, for every question, you should be able to tag it in your head. You should be able to give it a tag saying, okay, easy. Okay, I've already done this. Okay, I know how to approach this question. Or no, I've never attempted this. Or no, I've attempted this, but this is very hard, right? So all of this criteria you'll leave. Don't attempt. Attempt what? Attempt where a tag says basic type hai. This is a question that I've seen before. This is a question I find myself comfortable in. When you see those tags, that's when you attempt, right? But obviously a lot of work should have gone behind the scenes. If you haven't already put in that time, 3 days is more than enough to make those cheat sheets and say, okay, basic questions which I will attempt, these are the ones. Advanced questions which I will not attempt, these are the ones. Or topics which I will not attempt, these are the ones, right? At least have a clear strategy to go about attempting. Remember, we're also, and you should be realistic, right? If I'm attempting 18, if I'm targeting, 18 attempts, then I can't leave all topics, right? I can't, for example, say I'm not going to attempt anything from algebra. I still should be attempting 18. That's not realistic, right? So don't just strategize, also work towards it, right? Build towards it. Should I answer theta questions even if I'm not 100% sure? Well, Yogesh, theta is, absolutely, you should be answering theta questions, although I don't see the point of, if you don't know it, I don't think you should waste any more time on it. But by all means, even if you're 50% or 20% confident, you should be attempting that question. And finally, when talking about goals, you need to have you need to make time for a last minute blitz, right? I say minute, but I probably mean 5 minutes or so, right? Where this is the last 5 minutes of the CAT exam. I can I attempt 5 questions, make or break, in 5 minutes? Or maybe can I attempt 7 questions very, very quickly, which I've marked aside? I've marked them because I know how to eliminate 2 options. So 50-50 chance of getting it right. Have a shot. Let's take a shot at it, right? So you need to give yourself time in the end. You need to allow yourself time to make informed guesses, which might just boost your score at the last minute. So make sure that you plan for that and you execute this in the paper, right? Give yourself time for a last minute blitz, right? Basically, be prepared. In the last slide I said you should do a comprehensive analysis, get into as much detail, right? So that detail does include imagining likely situations, right? And being prepared for all of them, right? How to manage time, what if it's hard, what if it's easy, attempt how, what if the questions are jumbled up, what if they are bunched together, what if and so on and so forth, right? Which brings us to the penultimate topic or penultimate agenda on today's session, right? Which is mocks, right? Well, at the onset, I should say, if you're a serious CAT aspirant and you haven't taken 5 mocks yet, then you need have some soul searching to do, because it either seems that you're an overconfident person or that you don't believe in yourself, right? Because if you're not sure about CAT but you're still not taking mocks, then I think you must be short on confidence. Anyhow, what is the ideal number, right? It's the last week, and so how many mocks should we be taking on a daily basis, right? A lot of people say you should be attempting a mock every day. In the last week or so, you should be attempting a mock every single day. I for one think definitely avoid doing more than 1 mock daily. In fact, my personal suggestion will be, don't even attempt a single mock. In fact, last 3-4 days, don't attempt a mock at all, right? Because it's not like attempting mock tests is going to be the difference. I think people misunderstand mocks for I just need to take the text, I just need to do the mock and I'll learn something, right? No, you learn something from the mock, not by taking the mock, right? So you need to know you need to be smart, you need to know what you're chasing, right? So basically, instead of focusing on attempting mocks, you need to focus on analyzing mocks, right? What you should set yourself a target, right? You should be analyzing at least 1 mock every single day, right? In the last 4 days, maybe that number should be 3, right? So if I have 3-4 days to go, I can very easily blitz through 3 or 4 mocks every single day. But then the analysis needs to be depth, right? The analysis should tell me, okay, is this mock of easy level or hard level, and how do I identify that by looking at a sample of 4-5 questions? Can I say that, right? How do I make a judgment, right? How many questions will help me make that judgment, right? Which topics will give me that indication? How do I identify questions that I am getting right, I am getting wrong, right? Mocks will tell me, right? So I mean, make sure that you look at least 3 mocks every single day in the last 3-4 days left, but conduct a thorough analysis, right? When I say thorough, you need to go very, very in depth, right? Because the real value lies in what you learn from the mock, right? Insights, that any insight that you can build on, for example, I think an understated insight, one that everybody knows but nobody acts upon, is the fact that if you're doing this is more a matter of habit, right? 99 out of 100 people will face this problem, that you're more likely to attempt a question which has fewer lines in it. as opposed to a question where the text is very, it has more words in the text, let's say, right? So if it occupies more space on your screen, you're less likely to attempt it. And that's a very curious correlation, because this correlation basically inherently assumes that anything which is written by using many words must be hard, right? So basically, tough questions will have more words, easy questions will be simply written. No, I mean, there are many examples of small, short questions which are very hard. Just as there are many examples of extremely long questions that are very simple, right? So do not judge a book by its cover. Do not judge a question by its length, by the number of words it has, right? So don't don't focus on the number of questions. So this is a general insight, right? So what I tell myself is that, and again, it's probably a good idea to write all of this down, is I need to remind myself before I take a test, before I take the actual exam, that yes, I will be confident, I will be positive, but yes, I will read the question. I won't be hasty, because when a judgment made in haste is a judgment made with either less information or poor logic, and both of those are things that the cat tests, right? So don't fall into that trap. So be very comprehensive with your analysis, and try to reach at least 4 or 5 insights that are personal to you, that you really believe in, and carry that into the exam, and have chart yourself an approach that will help you overcome these mistakes that you're making. I keep saying analyzing, right? Let's look at that in a little more detail. Why analyze mocks? Well, I think the objective for you should be quite simple, right? At the end of the day, I'll say that the whole reason why I ask you to revise and analyze 12 to 15 mocks is that make sure that you don't repeat any of your mistakes, right? Which by that I mean, if you've attempted a question, I don't mean every single question you need to get right. No, that's not humanly possible. And remember, we're not saying the question repeats. It could be a different form of the same question, right? You should still back yourself to get it right, but not every single question, right? But I think you can be hard on yourself and say, if I've made a mistake here, I should make sure I don't make it there in the actual exam, because that's when it counts for the most, right? So know your mistakes, know what traps you fell in, and write those traps down, and remind yourself half an hour or an hour before the exam that these are the traps that I fell in, and I will avoid these traps on the actual exam day, right? So do not make a mistake twice. Remember, be liberal in defining mistakes, because a mistake is either a conceptual mistake or a silly mistake. It could also be a mistake in choosing the problem. It could be a mistake in spending too much time on a particular problem, right? So know that mistakes themselves are many types. So none of those should be tolerated. You should not, you need to have you need to cultivate a sense of identifying the question while also identifying your performance, right? And that has to go hand in hand, right? So do not make the mistake twice. The second learning why you should analyze mocks is also to cricket example here is to improve, right? A batsman needs to improve his timing and shot selection, right? I don't know if you get that, but the parallel that I'm drawing is that in cricket, the ball goes a farther distance if you strike it at the right moment, right? So similarly, here you need to be, you need to do questions in adequate time. Only then they will count for more, right? Similarly, there's also the question of, you can meet it at the right time, but you also need to play the right shot, right? So basically, I should know which questions to attempt, which questions to leave, but the ones that I am attempting, I should know what to do, right? So it's not just about choosing questions, it's about doing the right thing then and there and being accurate, right? So basically, attempting and accuracy, right? Both parameters at play. You need to analyze and improve both. You need to improve question selection. You also need to improve accuracy. Uh, and in an allegorical sense, you also need to you also need to cultivate this ability to smell the monsoon, right? And what I mean by that is that you need to cultivate the sense of understanding or gauging the paper and its level, right? And I don't mean, in a general sense, right? I mean that if you've looked at 15 mocks, for example, I think 15 mocks will not all be of the same difficulty level. I can for surely bunch those 15 mocks into at least, three different levels of difficulty, or I could, maybe paint out at least maybe 5, 7 categories in which I can bunch these mocks. So at least I'll have a way of measuring. Was it like category 1 mock which was easy in math but very hard in English? Was it like a category 2 mocks where all the sections were easy? Was it like category 3? So you get the idea, right? So in analyzing mocks, you also need to maintain, also need to learn, right? To have a judgment, have a very, very strong sense of judging the mock, right? And that judgment has to be strong enough that you should be able to compare on exam day. You should be able to compare the mock with something that you've done earlier, right? So I think being intensive with mock analysis at this point is actually very, very useful, because you will get a sense of benchmark, right? There will be a sense of deja vu saying, oh, this one is like that mock where the cutoff score was so and so, where the person, I did not score a good percentile because I made these mistakes. Wherever, whatever you can recall about that mock is important for you, because you need to avoid making mistakes, and you need to hit and choose the right questions and attempt it the right way, right? And a lot of it is about knowing that the test is hard or easy or not. So smell the monsoon, right? I mean, I think in an allegorical sense, what I'm trying to say is that if you're out there in the mountains and it rains, forget the mountains, anywhere, then and the earth gives out a smell, right? And you don't, even if you are indoors when it rained, you come out, even if there's no water, if that smell greets you, then you'll know it rained, right? Just like that, the mock itself doesn't need to have a title that says tough mock, or the exam doesn't need a title like that. You can actually, go through the first few questions and still gauge what kind of a test it is, right? How difficult or easy it is. And so in summary, I'll say that, again, to take a cricketing example here, cricketing parallel here, CAT exam is in one sense the test of your temperament. Can you adapt? Can you stay calm under pressure? Can you handle, the stress? And it's, it tests these parameters more than it tests your technique. It tests, to a lesser degree your technical ability, your, understanding of formula. Your knowledge of formula is, yes, it's important, but I think it's more a test of, can you recall the right formula in the right situation and apply it in a correct manner, right? So it's more a question of application and temperament and just being, in the moment than about prep or ability. Right, which brings me to, in my opinion, what is the most important, area you should be focusing on, which is yourself, right? Because remember, you're not a machine. You don't run on code. You don't learn like a machine does. And so, the fact that you're not a Android robot means that it's not like taking 15 mocks will suffice. That in itself does not, guarantee anything, right? So, neither should it demoralize you, nor should you be overconfident, right? Poor performance in mocks should not discourage you. At the same time, excellent performance in the last few mocks shouldn't excite you and beyond measure, right? Shouldn't satisfy you beyond measure. There should be a limit to how much you celebrate your performance, right? So let's talk about this balance in your attitude that you need to maintain. Well, well, I will talk about overconfidence in a bit, but I think the prevailing or the most prevalent symptom is that people right now face is that of worry, right? Most of you are worried, most of you are shivering in your thoughts about how the exam is going to go and how you're going to do in the exam, and those nerves, trust me, even I feel them, right? So it's normal to be worried, right? And so I expect, are you worried? Yes, if you're not, then I mean, that's not all bad, but if you are, then I would probably understand, and I'd say yes, that should be the case. But why should we worry, right? It's probably important for us to understand why we do so, right? Okay, many reasons for us to worry, but the most important one of all is our own expectations, right? Or maybe if it's not internal expectations that you have for yourself, it's probably external, where you're worried about your dad who expects you to get into IIM Ahmedabad. You're worried about your elder brother who looks up, who's gone to an elite school and wants you to do so too. It could be about your friends, maybe, so it's more about expectations. Typically, I think expectations are either internal yourself or external your family, right? Usually these are the two sources that lead to expectation and build this, what I like to call the burden of expectations on our shoulders, right? So yeah, you worry about, will I live up to my potential or not? A lot of these thoughts are quite existential in nature, right? So that's okay, common. Two, you worry about competition. You're like, okay, even if I've taken 10 marks, I've gotten a 99 percentile sometimes. These are finally, on the exam day, there are going to be 2.5 lakh people taking the CAT. I mean, I don't stand a chance. There are engineers who, I'm a commerce student, I'm a humanities student. There are, engineers who are competing against me. There are IITians that I'm going to sit against. And these are people who've cleared the IIT JEE. So they must be brilliant, right? So all of these negative thoughts come by, right? You're worried about competition. You're worried about your school topper. You're worried about your patch, topper or this study group that you have. You're worried about the rest of them doing well. Or, in the last week, this is quite common. You're worried about trends because, that's what all your sources will do. They'll give you these, trends. They'll tell you this is, they'll make predictions. They'll say, if you've not done this, then you won't do well, and they'll try and scare you. If it's not about trends, like, it could also be the trend of your own mocks, right? How maybe I did well in the first 5, but the last 5 mocks I've not been doing well. So maybe I'm worried more about my recent form. Maybe I hear this quite often. People worry because they have the afternoon slot, because they're like, mostly afternoon slot is taken by engineers, and so I don't do well, right? And the cutoff scores are a lot higher in the second slot, and people worry about this all the time. Completely irrational, by the way, because even if the paper is indeed tougher, don't worry, it will be normalized. So yeah, I mean, the percentile will automatically be taken care of that, right? So shouldn't worry about that. And if otherwise, you'll worry about peers. You'll worry about, okay, that guy studied with me, he's doing so much better than I am, right? So much to worry, right? Are these worries, are these reasons justified? Ask yourself, right? Should I be worrying about, my expectations? Is that a good thing to do? Should I worry about competition? Should I worry about trends? Should I be doing any of that? Well, all I'll say is that, in the world of marketing, there's a very stark phrase that we use: perception is reality and customer is king. Because all you need to do is you need to leave, the customer with an idea. That's what marketing does, right? It tells the customer that, hey, you need this. And up until you saw that ad, you probably didn't think that way. But the moment you see that ad, right? The moment you see, a Cadbury's ad, or that, beverage ad, it convinces you that you need it. And from the moment that your mind is convinced, you actually do need it, right? And you can't really resist that, right? So it's about convincing your mind. So perception is reality, right? And if it isn't already so, it will soon become, right? So if worries, are all that fill your head, then that worry will become reality, right? What you if you keep telling yourself that, I'm not going to clear, I'm going to disappoint my family, engineers do better, then you will fail, because you keep reminding yourself of that. Then your mind also learns and programs and acts accordingly, right? So make sure that you do not lose your self belief on account of repetition to yourself, right? On account of you just believing your thoughts, right? So guard your beliefs very, very carefully. You need to have confidence. uh, I mean, I think 3 days to go for CAT. I think you also need to be realistic, right? You need to be realistic and say, yeah. I mean, I know 2.5 lakh people write the CAT, but only 10,000 or so get shortlisted by the best of schools, right? So there's a greater chance of me not doing well. Is that the end of the world for me? No, I think there are many, many other exams which are happening, right? Your life will not come to an end if you don't go to college number A, right? So, trust me, I think have faith in your abilities. I think a talented person can do well everywhere. But, the guy who doesn't identify his talents will fail everywhere, right? So be, firm in your beliefs, right? Know your strengths, know your abilities, and believe that, right? Don't let praise or false praise inflate your ego. Don't let somebody tell you, no, you're good when you're not. At the same time, don't tell yourself that you're not good when you're above average, right? Because belief, you need to guard your beliefs. Because your mind is a fragile ecosystem of thoughts, and you don't want to let in spurious thoughts. Don't let them cloud your judgment, right? So be careful, guard your beliefs, right? Should we really be worrying? Absolutely. I think you need to guard, you need to differentiate between worry that is productive and worry that isn't, right? I think it's great if there are some exam day nerves, exam week nerves, because worries keep us on our toes. If no one was worried, if no one was afraid, if fear wasn't a reality, then we would have infinite accidents all around us, right? The only reason why you don't have, and it's funny because I talk about accidents, because in any case I think there are more accidents than should be, right, on the road. But if we did not have any fear, and that lack of fear was all pervasive, everybody would be driving crazy, right? So fear is important. I mean, I think it sort of yokes us down, it keeps us in check, it allows us to introspect, right? So worry is important to introspect, to analyze, and to understand oneself, right? But you need to balance your worries and your concerns against your accomplishments, against your past track record, right? I mean, and against your beliefs, right? So don't give in to these negative thoughts. Make sure that you also ask yourself every now and then, what are my positives, right? Where have I done well? Don't worry about the volume of your accomplishments. I think it's the impact that you should be worrying more about. I mean, don't bottle up your thought. I mean, accomplishments, for example, I'm going to quickly sort of go back to this with a personal example, right? And I remember the year that I actually got into IIM Bangalore. I'd taken about 15 or so marks in that year, and I remember very distinctly, out of 15 marks, I think I scored a 99 percentile maybe in 3, maybe 4 exams, maybe 4. But majority I didn't score a 99 percentile, right? So if I was to read myself on the basis of just those trends, then I should have been, I should have been very worried. I should have gone in with that attitude of I can't do well. But that's not what I did. I reminded myself of those 4 marks. I said, yes, if I really have a good day today, I think I can get a 99 percentile. I can get into IIM Ahmedabad, and I need to remind myself of that, and not worry about the remaining marks where I did not score well, because that doesn't help me. So dwell on your accomplishments more than you worry about your concerns, right? Similarly, don't bottle up your thoughts. I think a mistake that most of us make is that you don't worry aloud. We worry internally. We let those thoughts remain. We let those insecurities accumulate. We tend to be closeted about it, right? We don't tell our parents, and last person to, that you talk about, that you want to talk about vis-a-vis, CAT scores, mock scores, is your dad, right? You don't go speak to your dad. But I think the bigger concern is you don't speak to anybody. You're embarrassed with your friends. You're afraid of your dad. You're hesitant with your mentors or your teachers, right? So I think that's one thing that holds people back. Yeah, don't bottle up your thoughts. Don't hesitate. Make sure that you find a mentor around you. If you don't have any, contact us on the Unacademy app. We be sure to sort of help you guys out, but don't bottle up your emotions. Don't worry. And lastly, an inspirational thought. Remember, CAT is not an end goal, right? MBA might be. So know that this is not a single battle that you're fighting. CAT 2020, it's a battle. It's a war, right? It's a war which will have multiple battles. You might not win CAT 2020, you might not conquer it, but there are other smaller battles like XAT, like IFT, like NMAT. There are other major battles in the future, CAT 2021 for example. So know that it's a battle. It's a war. It's not small battles, right? So prepare yourself for the long haul. Have a longer term vision for yourself, right? Don't give up, in the sense of, even if CAT it doesn't seem likely that you'll improve before CAT, at least work hard and improve before the next exam, right? So sure, in a nutshell, I should say, should we worry? Sure, I think you should meditate on your concerns. I use the word very, very carefully, meditate, which means you need to consider them. But meditation assumes that you suspend judgment, and you look at it your concerns in a detached manner, right? If somebody else were worried about the same thing and you were advising him or her, what would you tell them? And that's something that you should be following without judging yourself, right? So I think meditate is an important word, not just because this is what you need to do, but this is also how you do it, right? How do you suspend judgment? How do you not, how do you control, keep a check on your worries? Well, you meditate. I don't know if you already are, if any of you already is. If you haven't, I think find time every single day, maybe half an hour or so, meditate, think about think about what's happening on a daily basis. I won't suggest think about this, think about that, but let your thoughts meander. It will surely settle on your concerns, and study them in isolation, but in a detached manner. That's the only way you can be calm about it and composed about it. And above all, please do not dwell on fears, right? Because remember, concerns, yes, worries, maybe, fears, definitely no, right? So that's something that you can keep in mind. Do I have any last minute tips, exam day tips, exam day, do's and don'ts? Yes, I think it's an important day in your life. Try to get there an hour before, right? And everybody tells you this, right? But don't get there too early either, right? Reach the center early, but don't get there too early, because you tend to get fidgety. If you can get to the test center, you want to get there an hour before the test begins, 45 minutes before the test begins. I think you can probably target 45 minutes before the test, and then give yourself an additional buffer of 15 minutes. So don't get there before, get there 1 hour before the test time, before your slot time. Maybe not a whole lot before it, right? Because don't give yourself the opportunity of being tense, nervous, on the day of the exam, right? So get there early, but not too early. Similarly, make sure that you have on your person only 2 items which are allowed by them, your admit card and your photo identity. Anything else, they will ask you to discard it, which will include, metallic objects, even keys, or your wallet, or your watch, or your, phone. So make sure that you leave them behind. In fact, better still, make sure you don't carry them for the test. And I know we talked about cricket examples today, and I did talk about temperament and not technique, right? This is a test of temperament, not a test of technique, right? And that also fits in very beautifully with this phrase, which is you need to play like it's a T20 and not like it's a test match, because in a test match you need to be guarded, focused on defense and leaving the good balls. Here you're playing a T20. I think you need to know when to defend but when to hit out. I think that's more important. So play it like a T20. Spot the opponent's weaknesses, right? Spot the test and see where it's easier to sort of hit those sixes, get those right answers, and do as many of those as you possibly can. So it's a T20 where you're focusing on getting a very, very high score in as short a time as you can. But at the same time, just because it's a T20 doesn't mean you rush into it, right? You need to be patient. You need to be calm. Don't have that nervous, fidgety energy that every 1 minute, I have to rush. That doesn't help either, right? So you need to be calm and composed and patient. And even if, and I think this is an important point, don't be frustrated, right? And there are many a time you'll see that consecutively 5 questions you're not able to solve, right? And automatically by the time you're on the 6th question, you're already frustrated. You're telling yourself this paper is very hard, or I'm pathetic, I'm a loser, I can't seem to make heads or tails of it, right? So don't let yourself be frustrated. Be patient and be calm. I think that is more critical to your chances than anything else. Okay, those are the tips that I have for you. One, last week, maybe last minute tips. All I can do from here on is wish you the best and implore you, in fact, to believe that you are indeed the best, right? Every single one of you can go ahead and achieve your dreams. And cracking CAT is just one step in that mountain you're climbing. So believe in yourself and do well this Sunday. Okay. Why Unacademy is great, a quick sort of reminder. Flexibility is the key. You can choose a flexible schedule that works for you. You can choose to study in a language that you are comfortable in. You can choose to study on multiple platforms, on multiple devices at suitable times for yourself. It's highly interactive. It allows you to ask questions. There are doubt sessions dedicated where you can do that, or you can even do that in the middle of a lecture. The educator can also see these doubts and answer them live. In fact, the educator also has the flexibility of himself asking questions and creating them as polls. So he also gets to measure the class performance, the batch performance, and fine tune his delivery in class, right? And finally, practice unlimited questions in the form of tests, in the form of quizzes, in the form of and you'll have daily reports. You'll have your performance reports that will help you identify strengths and weaknesses and get better, right? So something which is critical, and these are the plans that will help you do so, right? You should keep in mind that the longer term plans will be better. So think somewhere in this bracket, maybe even the 12 or the 24-month plan is what I would say is the best, right? And don't forget to use my referral code, that's AV01, right? I'm highlighting this again at the bottom. AV01 is my referral code, gets you a 10% discount on any subscription plan. All the best, guys. Do like, share and subscribe this video as widely as you can. I hope to catch you guys very, very soon again. Until then, see you. Have a great day, and bye bye.